Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Mortis FM, a Star Wars podcast. I am Grayson, one of your hosts.
I'm Cole, the other host. Grayson, what are we talking about today? Because it's been a little bit. I wonder what's been going on.
We are talking about the Acolyte episode 7.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, this episode is dubbed Choice.
Choice.
It's been a little bit. We took last week off because we were in Disneyland the week prior. If you didn't see that special episode, go check that out. That was a fun time. People really received that well. But yes, we are back this week talking about the penultimate episode of the Acolyte.
Yes, we are. And Grayson, I gotta ask, how are we feeling about it?
I'll just go ahead and say that this was probably the first episode that I really wasn't a fan of. And not to say that I adamantly disliked the episode. There's things that I liked about the episode, and I'm not completely down on the show, but it did take a little bit of a nosedive for me. I found this episode to be, I guess, it's a mixture of disappointing and frustrating in a lot of ways. Just because there was a lot of build up to this episode, and then while I think the bones there are intriguing, and I said intriguing, sorry for context. We have a friend, and he always roasts me because I say intriguing. I found it captivating. Hello, Raymond. So it was just everything that the kind of the execution of it all didn't really hit with me. I'll get into specifics here in a bit. Overall, I'm still excited for next week. That's kind of the where I'm at there. But this week I was like, dang. Well, that was. I'll go and preface and say we have been defenders of this show, or at least defenders of giving this show a chance and waiting and seeing how everything falls into place.
Honestly, to be more clear, we have been defenders of honest critique.
Right.
Yeah. So
and I have said, I was like, when the time comes, if I don't jive with it, then I'll say so. And I think there was a lot riding on this episode being the fill-in gap of the flashback, the complimentary episode of episode 3, which was that was probably the most controversial episode of the show thus far, maybe other than Kiadi Mundi. Which is crazy. That's already come and gone. I was just like, okay, well, it is a little bit of a bummer because it didn't hit as well as I wanted it to, and that was kind of sucky, but not sucky in the sense that the episode itself was sucky. I think that has redeeming merits, but it was just, to me, I finished the episode and I was like, that was a little bit of a bummer. How do you feel though? You have told me nothing about your thoughts.
So I was I had become aware of Grayson and some friends' thoughts given a group chat, and I had not seen the episode at the time, so I was like, my view was a little warped, so I was going in expecting for something to be wrong, and by the end of the episode, I was like, okay, not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
I'm going to be honest and say I still think that as an episode it was still good. But I don't like some decisions that were made, or maybe I would rather say were not made, I guess. It felt like I think everything remained as quality as it was, but for some reason the writing took a little bit of a nosedive. Just for some very specific key points. And so I'm not upset, but I'm like, well, this kind of, I don't like what it does for the show.
Yeah.
So I'm not upset, but I was just like, okay, all right, it was just kind of interesting. And we'll go into detail when we get to those points, but essentially, the episode as it was, I think, was still well done, but the writing for some reason just felt very off compared to how it was being set up throughout the show. And one could say that, well, it's because of your expectations, right? And I mean, sure, like theoretically, yes, I guess this was planned from the start, but it's interesting setup for something that just didn't really pay off. There isn't really a payoff. It's just kind of, this was the answer to the mystery, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think they were building up for this other side of events. This was part of our expectations, but I do feel like it was valid expectation, at least on our part, of like, they were definitely setting up for what happened on this night on the viewpoint of the Jedi and May to be a lot worse than it actually was.
Really bad.
Yeah. Like, I mean, so bad to the point that Torben, I just thought about this today. It was so bad to the point that 16 years later, Torben kills himself.
Not even, 16 years later, but he also was like 10 years into self-imposed isolation for that, you know? And I mean, I'll be real. Torben was wigging that night, but but 10 years of that and then suicide. I mean, wow. I think that's a lot. So, and then Soul, you know, keeping this secret for such a long time. So like, you know what? I guess we're going into it. It is made out to be like they truly did a terrible thing.
They murdered all these witches in cold blood, right?
And when this episode ended, I was like, oh, so the mystery is pretty much what we kind of inferred from that episode, I guess. You know, because it was like not saying that we were like, oh, this is how it happened, but the way that it's presented to us from Osha's perspective is, oh, May started the fire, and then crazy stuff happened, and then they all died, and like that's pretty much that's pretty
exactly
much it.
How it happens.
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, so the mystery, it's exactly how you thought it was gonna happen, you know. I think it was definitely built up to be a lot more sinister than it was. And it could be because, I mean, I don't know, maybe Corp execs didn't want Jedi to be murderers, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe it really was supposed to look like an accident. And I gotta say, I think there is something that really bothers me, is that all of the witches die from using a spell.
Yep. That's one of the first things that's really boggling to me is
to control Kelnaka, you know, all of them die from that.
Literally just because Andara is like freeze him and they all slump over dead. And that is confirmed in an article, by the way. That was confirmed by a direct article.
So they are dead from that. Yeah. And okay, so it makes me wonder, well, I mean, when the spell wore off, was that going to happen? Or did Indara kill all of them by doing, you know, did she essentially do the equivalent of like, you know, sticking a fork into the electric socket and just zapping them all, right?
I think that Leslie Headland talks about it. So I'll go ahead and get this out of the way. Is a lot of these things that we're about to address were things that I had, like, this was one of them. The Indara Kelnaka witch dying thing was one of the first things that I was like, what? I was like, that's how they died? So the very next day after the episode came out, an article dropped. This was, I believe yesterday. So we're recording this on a Friday. I think it dropped on a Wednesday or a Thursday, maybe yesterday. And an article dropped from Nerdist. It was an interview directly with Leslie Headland, and a lot of these things that I had questions with, she just straight up explains in an interview. And it basically, and if there are things that are not explained properly, she'll either be like, okay, well, you're gonna find out next week, or well, let me tell you how it is, you know. And here's the thing, I'll just go and say, like, I've really have applauded that Leslie Headland is a fan of Star Wars and everything.
Yeah.
But I was very frustrated by this article because these are things that I was really hoping the show would at least attempt to explain, or at least help me make my own inference about, like, to be like, oh, well, how did they die, you know? And it's just kind of like, yeah, they just all kind of died, you know? And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm more into the David Chase route, even though in the past couple of years David Chase did go into detail about the Sopranos, but before, when the show ended, he was just like, I'll leave it up to your interpretation, you know, like a bunch of questions. They were like, You know, he was like, I would prefer to not tell everybody everything, you know, because it was left ambiguous for a reason, right? So like if the show wants to tell you something, it will, you know, but if it's not, figure it out or let it go, you know? So yeah, with this, I think just kind of straight up answering those questions, probably not great if you didn't.
There's more. Like there's more. There's another example very similar in proximity to this moment where I like that example that you give of like the fork in the socket thing, you know, or just like cutting the wire and making it short circuit, you know, like. But I remember that moment of being like, even in the interview, they were like, okay, so did Indara kill them? And she was like, kind of indirectly, she killed them, but like without, like she did that to save her friend, not knowing it would kill them, but she did kill them. And you're just like, but that wasn't like, you didn't even at least set that up of like showing her being like, oh my gosh, I killed them all, you know, of being like, or did I do that, right? And that being a thing up to our audience interpretation, it was just like, they're dead. Do you know why? Not really.
The simplest like way to remedy that show, or like that part of the episode, I mean, is like simply have there be a moment of recognition, like just 1 or 2 lines where, you know, Indara realizes that what she is about to do is going to kill them, and then she ends up doing it anyway, or she does it and then she realizes, I think I just killed them all.
Right.
Know? And that one moment,
really good.
I think that one moment would have solved the buildup here, because let's be honest, like the belief that we had was that the Jedi went in there and murdered all of them, and technically they did. So I think it still works, but I think in the way that it was presented, it was off.
Right.
It's kind of uncomfortable. And another thing I'm going to mention, what we were like, did May start the fire? And then in this episode, it's like, yeah, she did.
Yeah, which that fire then causes the explosion. It is nothing else. Because they even, I remember episode 3, we were like, oh, well, they're like, that it was, the implication was that fire caused and we were like, no, like obviously that's not the case. And a lot of people thought, well, the explosion killed the witches. Well, that's not true, but it is still something kind of weak. But then, that fire causes a short circuit, which blows up the main generator in this mine. And I was like, what kind of electrical work is that, dude? I'm like, I don't think that's how that works.
Well, I just think the funniest thing to me, though, is, I'm going to be honest, okay? May and Osha are not the smartest.
No.
Like, and look, I know that in those scenes, they're kids, but both of them do really dumb stuff later on, too. But I laugh to myself when, like, May sets the paper on fire, and then she doesn't say anything, but then she's basically just like, oh my God, it's on fire. You know, like, what did you think was going to happen, that when you set it on fire, that it was going to be set on fire? She deliberately went like this to turn the paper on fire. And then she's like, you know, like, I don't know. It's just, it's so funny to me that, I had that exact thought in that moment. I'm just like, oh no, you set it on fire and now it's on fire. And, they're not very smart. But then I guess their mother is probably not the same here, because she does the equivalent of like what looks like to be a very dangerous move, and I don't know what it is that she's doing here. And we can talk about that.
That is another key point where I'm like, what is happening right here?
Yeah. So here's this is like the point of contention. Torben, Coral, Anasea, and Sol are all like, you know,
kind of squaring up.
Yeah, they're squaring up. And then May shows up and she's like, she's about to say that, you know, I started a fire. Right. I intentionally set something on fire, and now there's a fire. She looks at May, and then she, you know, does this thing where she kind of like turns into this shade, you know,
and like her teeth get sharp, and she like starts to.
She looks real evil, and then it looks like the same thing starts to happen to May, very, very briefly, and then Sol, because this looks really evil, and notices that something's happening to May, stabs Anasea. So I think that part, like, moment for Soul, I think that's good. I think that makes sense. Because he wants to protect the kids, and it looks like something obviously bad is going to happen. So in a moment's notice to protect her, he stabs Anastasia.
This moment, I think it makes sense for Soul. Originally, I was like, why would he do that? But now I think I thought about it more, and I was like, that does make sense why he would do that. But this entire moment right here, this entire scene is incredibly frustrating for me because it starts off, it's Torben and Soul, they're there, the witches have the archers aimed at them, it's Coral is getting really aggressive. Even Anastasia is like kind of dissing the Jedi, like, when you'll do this again, it'll kill all of you guys, right? So then May runs in, but then Soul goes, Osha! It's not Osha, it's May, I was like, what? I was like, you know what Osha looks like. And this was also explained in the article. I'll get to that in a second. I want to get to the moment we're talking about. And then the thing where she starts to turn into this shade, like you said.
Yeah.
And she starts looking real evil and Soul stabs her. Originally, I was like, why did he do that? Because he doesn't even know what she's doing. But then I'm like, okay, she did look pretty evil. But then I was like, okay, but what is she doing? Right? I was like, what? I was like, and I'm like,
what is she doing?
I was like, this is not clear to me at all because you don't really get answers later on. Leslie Headland explained it in an article. She just explained. She said that Anastasia was turning her and May to become one with the Force, or to become part of the Force. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What? Well, I was like, what does that? I was like, what does that mean? I'm like, so does that mean you guys are just like, is this a Obi-Wan or like Yoda thing where they just kind of like dissipate? Is she trying to save May by like killing themselves, or like, what do you mean by becoming part of the Force?
This brings about more questions now, because Coril does that thing too, but you can hear her afterwards.
Oh, Coral's not dead. The article confirmed it.
So then is this like Force transportation then?
Is it a teleportation? Yeah,
because like Anastasia, I know, like, 100%. Anastasia is not trying to kill May here.
No.
So becoming one with the Force begs into question, okay, so are they essentially like dissipating to reappear? You know, that makes sense to me. Maybe, that sounds like something that would be happening. So then I'm okay with her answering it as it was, because that still feels ambiguous to a certain extent.
I do. The more I think about it, someone explained that in a chat today. They were like, it's still ambiguous enough because it's like, yeah, they're becoming part of the Force to maybe they're it's kind of like Harry Potter. They're disapparating to reapparate somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, I think it's literally just a form of transportation. It's weird. Yeah. I mean, it is like it's like Voldemort smoke, you know.
I do think the scene would have been better if we had seen them do that prior, in some context, you know. Say that Anastasia is like the before the Ascension or the day after the Ascension, she's like showing her how to do this. So we as the audience know what Anastasia is doing, but it comes up and it's like, and it makes sense that Soul would do that because it's like, oh, this looks really evil. But as an audience member, I'm like, why did you do that? What are you doing? Huh? I don't, and I was like, also, how does a lightsaber go through you? I was like, I thought you were like, was she like not fully in that form yet? Maybe?
Well, with Coral, when she does it, like she goes into that form and then she disappears, you know? Okay. So I think like this was like a halfway, right? Okay. So her molecules were still there, you know? Yeah. And Soul stabbing Anastasia brought her back in, you know? Mm-hmm. So I don't think it was done yet. Yeah. So I'm gonna say that like that was like a halfway sort of thing. Looked very evil. But the one thing that you'll notice actually is that like Soul doesn't do this move while she's doing that until he notices that the same thing's happening to May.
Yeah.
And then he does it. You know, it feels like a protective thing at first. Mm-hmm. So like I am glad that he didn't just see that and was like, you know.
Yeah, he looked at her because she was kind of turning into it as well. It was definitely in defense of the children, which is kind of his whole motivations the whole episode, which personally I like, you know, even if it's a little like him getting a little overzealous of being like, I kind of want to, it was kind of portrayed as like, I'm trying to be the hero, you know, I'm trying to be the hero of these, but it was still like, I don't blame him for making that choice because he does want to protect both of them, you know.
That thing unbalanced him, and I think that makes sense So let's talk about the thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Can I mention the one thing that doesn't make sense right after this? Literally right after this, as soon as he stabs her, it's immediately he holds Anastasia in his arms, and she goes, I was gonna let her live.
She's like, I was gonna let her live.
Let her leave, you know? And I was like, let Osha leave and go with you guys. And I'm like, Anastasia, not even 20 seconds ago, you were dissing the Jedi being when you guys do this. Like it was like a complete 180. I was like, why wasn't Anastasia more amicable about it? You know, like
I think it's I'm also frustrated with that line, but for different reasons. I think for that, it's like she obviously detests the Jedi regardless. Right. But I think it's like you could tell from the previous like flashback episode that like it upset her a lot. But but it was looking like she was gonna let Osha go.
Right.
You know, she was choosing to be a mother, as she says. You know, but she still really doesn't like the Jedi. She's like, look, I'm mad, but you can go to this school if you want to, and I'll never see you again, I guess. You know, but like what bothers me is that she says, you know, I was gonna let her go as like a sort of thing, like you really acted out, like talking to Soul, like as if going like, man, I would have let her go, you know?
Yeah.
And she's saying that right after doing a crazy looking thing that, for all she knew, he didn't know what that was. And obviously he didn't know what that was. So it would have been interesting if it, like, I thought to myself, I was like, well, why didn't you just say, hey, I'll let Osha go. And then they go, and then she does the thing with May. You know, like I feel like the moments, it was just dumb.
That's my thing. Is it like you said? I think what frustrates me here is that a lot of the characters just come across as it makes everybody look really stupid. And I'm like,
there's a lot of like very rash decision making here. But the one person that is more rash than anybody else, Torben.
Yeah.
Dude, Torben is tweaking out, okay? Like he's been there for like 7 weeks, okay? He's been on Brendock for like 7 weeks. And he's like, I want to go home. And like I get it, right?
Yeah, you get it.
But when Anastasia like finds that that's like his weak point and is like, you know, I promise, you know, I'll let you go home. You know, he throws away everything so that he can go home. And so I just felt very like, dude, you need to chill, you know?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, I understand more than a lot of people,
right?
That like sometimes when the chips are down and like you start freaking out, like you're panicking, like I can understand why he made that decision, but I don't think it is a good catalyst for the event.
I agree.
I would be okay for Torben to still have this issue, but I don't think that should be the catalyst of the attack, right? I think that really, that just felt like I mean, he might as well have just said like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, you know, like I gotta go pee so bad, and the witches have the only bathroom on the planet. I don't want to go outside, you know. And that feels like the same thing, because like he really just wanted to get them home. I think it would be cooler if it was like, from a righteous point of view, like, this is the virgins, we need to take them down, this is the right thing to do, like a kind of like,
why are we waiting around?
Yeah, like extremist Yord situation, but he was doing it from a place of just wanting to go home.
Yeah.
And from the position of a Padawan who potentially has never left Coruscant, I can understand the homesickness.
Yeah.
Especially because on Brendock, really, really, really boring collecting plants for that long, probably. So I get it. I don't think it's an unnatural thing, but it's not a good catalyst. That's just why it bothers me.
Yeah, like that, I completely agree with you, because like the more I've thought about it, like admittedly, when I saw Torben, it did remind me of you in a lot of ways, because I was like, I know you're more of a homebody, like, yeah, and it is boring and whatever. Like I was like, I think I'm someone who I definitely have more of like a mentality where I'm like, oh, I'm just want to push through it. But I get it. It's like, it's been 7 weeks. They're collecting plants. It's boring or whatever. But then the moment he like got on the speeder and was like, all right, this is our chance to leave the planet. You know, I was like, I was like,
what are we waiting for? You know,
it was like, as someone who like, you are my friend who like, I get that. Like I could see you in Torben, but I was like, I could not see, like, I don't know. I was like, I could not see Cole doing that, you know, to be like, let's forsake this entire mission just so I can go home. You know?
Even then I would have like, I would have just kind of, it would have been more or less like a suffering in silence kind of thing.
Right.
But for him, I think, I mean, he was a Padawan, he was a kid, you know, it was something that was, you know, a very rash decision. But the thing is like, that was the only reason why that was there, was a catalyst to bring them to the colony.
Yeah.
You know, the coven. And so, because once they get there, nothing is done with that plot line. You know, nothing is done with Torben still wanting to go home. He doesn't even act out while they're there. Like he I mean,
as soon as he walks in the compound, he's like, never mind.
He kind of locks in. Like, he does really cool deflection. Dude, I would say that.
Torben, he was going crazy with that lightsaber.
I know. But like, so then when that is the reason for them going over there, and then nothing's done with that, it makes me feel like, okay, if it made me feel like if I had written this, I probably would have done something a bit more convincing. I mean, honestly, just.
I think it should have been Soul.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, like, if we're going with this whole big plot about Soul's guilt, have it be his direct fault. It's his fault that they went over there. Maybe Indara and Kelnaka and Torben were like, we're just going to, you know, keep doing what we were doing. You know, this is none of our business. Council said no. And Soul, in the night, sneaks out on his own to do this thing.
What if it's like, yeah,
maybe he gets captured and the Jedi have to go rescue him, and then it becomes a whole altercation, you know, easy as pie.
Right. It's immediately I was thinking, I was like, imagine it's like in the middle of the night, right? And there are all the stuff's happening. They've already done the tests and whatnot. You know, they've already got the word that, at least from May's perspective, right? Which I think this was really well done, where she's like, she says about the sacrificing thing. She misinterpreted what Anastasia said about sacrificing part of yourself. She's like, oh yeah, we have to be sacrificed or whatever to become new. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, make it where it's like, I mean, this is a very prominent thing in the Jedi, would be a kind of a good parallel to Anakin as well, where he's sleeping and he sees a vision like then and there where they're being sacrificed, right? You know, like, it's like the dark side presence, the vergence of the, because we also know that Brendock is or at least is a vergence in the Force, or at least whatever is with the witches is, and so maybe that's affecting his mind. You know, the dark side's getting to him, and he wakes up and he's like, I have to go now. They're being sacrificed. Like, they could be sacrificed at any moment. And then Indara...
I have to save them, you know?
Yeah. That's his whole motivation. The whole episode is he's trying to save both of them, which he more so is trying to save Osha, as we see later on, which that moment is also very frustrating to me. But I think that would have just been... I know that they wanted to give Torben some depth, but I like the idea of, like, then maybe Torben is the one that catches wind, and he has to go out, like, he goes after Soul. Well, and then
no. You see, you're cooking here. This makes sense. All right. Like, okay, so Soul would be the catalyst here. Soul clearly had the more like passionate motivation, because he already raised his voice a couple times on the matter, right? So he goes there. He goes in the night. Torben, who is already restless from wanting to go home, notices that Soul's leaving and tries to track him down, and Torben gets captured, you know? And so then there becomes a problem, you know? So, because if you're going to set up that, like, these two motivations, like, try not to kind of muddle them together, because Soul was just kind of getting what he wanted by chasing Torben down, you know? I think it would have made more sense to me, and that would have explained why Soul was just so guilt ridden over it, because
Torben,
Torben, right?
Because that would have, because then him getting captured would have led to all of these witches getting killed, you know, all these things happening, and May dying, and he feels like it's his fault, right?
Yeah.
But in this version of the story, like, admittedly, I just don't see why Torben would view anything being his fault other than going to the place. Just going there in the first place, but as soon as he gets there, he's just kind of a bystander, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think his guilt's definitely there because he ended up being the catalyst, but again, not the best one that could have been used.
Right.
And so, generally, with this whole thing, Yeah, I think those are just kind of like some of my big problems is like, all right, interesting writing decisions made here. I don't think the episode was bad.
Yeah.
Like I still think, as I said, everything that was in the show so far, like all parts of production is still quality except for the writing, which took a little bit of a dip, you know.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about one last thing that I did not like, and then I want to move on to the positive, because I do have a lot of positives about it. I have a lot of cool things and references and things that were well done.
Still cool stuff that happened in this episode. You know, I didn't.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of things that did make it entertaining to me and worth watching. So there's actually two things that kind of frustrated me. One is very nitpicky. The CGI with the speeders was not great. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I did notice there was one shot where it lingered on Soul being on the speeder for a little too long.
Yeah.
Like it's when he stops in the forest and he's like this, and then it stops for like maybe a full second.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of sitting there, and I don't know. I thought to myself, I was like, that's a little funny. Like maybe they could have cut it a couple frames before.
There was a couple shots with the CG that I noticed, at least with the speeders, where it looked PS2 video game to me, where it was just kind of like it was just kind of like I don't know, like it just looked kind of floaty, but it didn't like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's horrible, because that's just not what we're like, you know.
It was a little funny. Yeah,
it was just a little funky.
But it just kind of made me think of the prequels, you know.
Yeah.
And so like I still felt at home, you know, in a weird way. I was like, there's my bad CGI. Had to be in here someplace.
Somewhere. The only other moment is the moment when Soul attempts to save May and Osha. And it really comes down to, again, Soul being a little dumb, all right? And that's the thing. And maybe, listen, it might be the intention to just make all these characters stupid. I don't know. Like I not that I think they're like dumb, but like that, they just do a lot of things that, like, when they're constantly circulating on both parties doing stupid things, because occasionally, like, you know, in stories, like Anakin is someone, he makes dumb decisions sometimes, and that can make for an interesting story where Obi-Wan's like, calm down, Anakin, you know. But this is a story where it's dumb. Like, he was like, but when Soul is saving May and Osha, everybody, and listen, I do get May and Osha are children, okay? It's like. Yeah. And so, like, the whole fire thing, like, it is funny with, like, it's on fire. Yeah.
No, I was so dumb as a kid. I'm just saying that, like...
You can't help but laugh, right?
Yeah. Osha, but I'm also saying it because Osha does some dumb stuff, as I had mentioned in our previous episodes before.
Yeah.
Like with Torben's body. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's Soul. He's there. They're both on the catwalk. It's split up. The generator's exploding because of the little fire, which, again, that's a whole other thing, but whatever. I already talked about that. But they're both on the catwalk, and he's using the Force to hold up the catwalks, okay? Notoriously, we know it's just harder to hold heavier stuff with the Force. It's not all created equal, you know? It's easier to lift sometimes it's, at least in a lot of people's heads, it's easier to lift a pebble than it is to lift an X-Wing, right? This is what Luke goes through in Empire Strikes Back. Soul is using the Force to hold both of these catwalks. I know these catwalks are not light. They are very heavy. That's just, I know that. May and Osha are probably what, like 70, 80 pounds? Like, and I'm like, immediately, the first thing that's funny to me is that May and Osha are standing there, and they're like, I don't remember, I didn't count exactly how many times, but I want to say it was at least 3 times that they go back and forth where she goes, May, Osha, May, Osha, May, Osha. And I'm like, guys, I'm like, first of all, you are both Force sensitive. Like, this could be an interesting moment where you, like, and I know for the story, I mean, they could still make this in the story, but like, say, like it could be, and I know it also has to be that Soul, like, it makes it look like that May fell and that Osha can't be like mad at Soul or whatever. But I'm like, you guys could at least help each other. But then it comes to Soul, where Soul is at least there, and he could be like, May, Osha, help each other, because he clearly cares about both. Now, does he care about Osha a little bit more? Yes. He feels like called to Osha being his Padawan. But him holding on to the catwalks as opposed to just holding on to them, I think he is a knight or a master at this point. So I don't think this would be a difficult feat for him.
I already have the solution.
Lay it on me.
I have this solution to how this would be done.
Okay.
It's shot almost the exact same way. But Soul got really, really hurt in the fight against Kelnaka.
Yeah.
And as he tries to hold both of these girls together, he realizes they're both slowly sinking, and he can only hold one. And so...
Not the catwalks. Let's say the catwalks are like falling underneath them or something.
Yeah. Or like, the catwalks are too much, right? One of them collapses. Both of them collapse. He and then he holds both girls, but he's weak. Kelnaka messed him up.
Yeah, I would say
and the
what if
girls
Kelnaka scratched one of his arms and he's like holding down, and so he's like,
the girls are still falling, and he realizes there's nothing he can do except for choose one of them, which would be really good for his character because his entire motivation was that he wanted to save both of them. He wanted to save these kids, and so now he has to choose one, and then that is why earlier in the season he goes, May is dead, like it's very, so yeah. I think, and he feels guilty because he deliberately, chose Osha over May. I think that would be a great way to do it as opposed to...
And that's basically what happens. It's just that it's done in a way with like the catwalk thing where I'm like, you could just you could easily have saved both of them,
Yeah.
And like, not that I'm a Jedi, not that I know how hard it is, but I'm like, he was struggling to hold up these catwalks, which yes, were disconnected, and they were like, I'm going to imagine these are at least a ton each. This is like 2,000 pounds on both sides that are falling like this. I'm like, but if Obi-Wan can hold up Leia, and that was him with a really weak connection in the Force. And the Kenobi show, I was like, I know Soul can get both of them at least, right? And so that moment, I was just like, my dad presented that to me, and he was like, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. And I was like,
well, like if I'm correct, the catwalk gave and then May fell, right?
From what I understand, they were both falling. He was holding both up, and then he realized he wasn't going to be able to hold both up, so he focused his strength on one, and then she fell, and he ran to grab Osha. Is that what it?
I kind of just saw it as he just kind of failed to grab May for some reason. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. I don't know why I didn't notice this. He deliberately just lets May's catwalk go. But again, just hold the girls.
Yeah.
Girls.
Yeah.
So,
and that's right. I like the idea of him getting injured by Kelnaka as well, because if Torben got injured, and yes, it was it was a cool visual representation, but it would have been cool if Soul was as well, because then it's a thing of it feels, it is essentially the same scenario, but it inherently weakens him in one way, where his literally, because we know that people can use the Force without using their arms. It's a thing where you can use it with just their mind if they're that strong, but typically it's kind of a mental thing where it's almost like it's an extension of yourself, right? And so to think that maybe Soul's not strong enough, he got hurt really bad, and so he's kind of struggling to keep one of his arms open, and they're both I think the reason they did the catwalks was so that way that May and Osha were looking at each other, and that Osha doesn't realize that Soul let May fall. Because I don't think Osha knows that. So I get that was why they did that. But it's still, and because they wrote themselves into a corner where they were Osha has to live and May has to quote die.
Yeah.
But it does, but at the same time, it's kind of because you wrote yourself into a corner, that kind of has to happen. But in actuality, he could have, at least in this state of what happened in the episode of him just staying there and holding both, he could have just shifted his power to holding them up instead of them. And it's just kind of
well, okay,
maybe needs some tinkering,
Okay, well, probably it's tinkering in lieu of headcanon now. So thinking about it, okay, I'm gonna try to keep this short, but let's think about the video game metrics, right? So when you use the Force on a force powerful, very midichlorian intensive person, you know, it's harder to do as opposed to like an inanimate object, you know, I would say.
I mean, but that's only if the midichlorian, the person who uses the force is in opposition of you.
But here's the thing, like May and Osha like we don't even know what their midichlorian count, but Torben said it was like extremely high.
Yeah, he said it was very high.
And so what I'm wondering here is like, how much does it take to fully levitate someone in the force of that level, you know? And this is me just kind of like throwing...
They're midichlorian fat.
Yeah.
They're like, they're so dense in midichlorians, they're just like, you know, strong.
What I think is like Yoda saying size matters not, but, you know, perhaps in terms of the force, like the mass is extensive, you know? So I don't know, like I'm really just throwing like darts at a board here, but like I think that would kind of make sense for me. But that would, in order to execute that correctly, you would have to have him attempt to hold both of them first, and then go, oh my gosh, I can't do that.
Honestly, I think it's just more plausible to think that in the stress of the moment, you know, and while it still kind of bothers me, you know, we are people that do this. In the stress of the moment, he didn't think to hold them. He thought about holding the catwalks. The catwalks were already something they were standing on, and so I mean, he's already gone through so much in the past 15, 20 minutes with fighting Kelnaka and killing Anastasia and all of this stuff that he's like. He immediately, it's an instinct, right? It's very instinctual. He goes for the catwalks, and then he doesn't even think, like, he's so focused on trying to save them that he doesn't even think, like, oh, I can just grab both. And that happens sometimes, you know?
I mean, in a way, you could also suggest that it would require, because he was very weakened by Kelnaka, so you could say that it requires a lot more usage in the Force to levitate something as opposed to keeping something where it is.
Yeah. We have seen that in some instances where, like, for a while, kind of before Kenobi, I was always kind of like, yeah, it's harder to lift a person than it is an object, like an inanimate object. Yeah. But then some things have kind of showed otherwise. And I honestly just think it comes down to, yeah, like he was weakened from the fight. I mean, he was exhausted. That is a factor, you know, your physical exertion of, like, you know, and of course, high level Jedi, they grow beyond that. They don't get exhausted by that. Think of Chimere running through the forest. Like, he was not exhausted at all. And then he killed 10 Jedi in a row and was like, yeah, I'm chilling. Whereas and again, like, I know Sol he's not a Padawan, but he was just in a fight against a Wookiee who was no holds barred, you know, like, and I mean, he was, let's go ahead and move about, like, let's go to talk about positives, I guess, because I think we've we figured that scene out. That fight rocks.
Just I will say, like, one more time, just to kind of put a cap on this bottle for that. As we know, in media, characters make stupid decisions like this all the time. Like, there are a lot of instances in movies where, like, well, why didn't they do just like this? Why didn't Vader hold Luke up in the air as he was falling down in Bespin?
Right.
You know, like, if you're gonna point that out, you know, you have to point out there's other dumb decisions that are made. Okay, so, like, like, and in the heat of the moment, even our own personal memories, we go, like, why didn't I just do that? You know?
I mean, that might be a thing of, like, Sol being, like, the next week, it might be the beginning where he's like, I could have saved you and I didn't, you know?
Okay, you took it a more serious route. I just pictured, like, Sol in, like, the Jedi cafeteria, and he's like, oh, you know?
If Robot Chicken ever starts making skits for Star Wars again, he's just like, why didn't I think of that?
I think that could be really funny.
That would be funny.
But yeah, so that sort of stuff happens all the time. But yes, as you brought up, the fight against Kelnaka is really cool.
Yeah,
I really liked that, and I am very glad that we got to see Kelnaka as a Wookiee Jedi being utilized, because, as you know, as the rest of the show showed us, we didn't really see any of it. It was like, oh, you know, live action Wookiee Jedi, and then he's dead in his chair off screen, you know, and so we were all kind of hoping that we would get to see some Wookiee Jedi action, and we did.
Yeah.
So I was happy to see that, and it took the whole team, really. Well, honestly, Indara. It took Indara to step in.
So there was one thing that I wanted to mention, and I failed to. I heard some people say this. I don't think you ever get a clear shot of it. I'm kind of the belief that he didn't, because that feels kind of irregular to me, but maybe he did. So we talked about this a while back because of KOTOR and how Wookiee, we talked about it with Black Chrysanthemum, that Wookiees that unceremoniously or dishonorably use their claws in combat, they self-exile themselves. They are considered mad claws, right?
Oh, yeah.
So someone pointed out, they said that Kelnaka's claws were filed down. I never saw that. I never saw that anywhere, because I was under the implication that what he did to Torben's face was he did claw him across the face with his Wookiee claws.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason, I'm of the belief that part of the reason why he was on Kofar, even though the Jedi did assign him there, was also maybe a request by the Jedi to be like, maybe he, like, because obviously he's not that deep in Wookiee culture anymore. If he is a Jedi, he's probably been with them for a long time. But still, he probably knows their ways the same way Gunji does. And him to be like, please send me here, let me be here so I can exile myself. Like, maybe he feels guilt for doing that. And I really like that, if that's true. I mean, I feel bad for Kelnaka because it wasn't his control, but it is a cool thing.
I mean, he exiled himself, so maybe as like just pure Wookiee tradition, you know, he just saw it befitting to do this. He
begged the Jedi. He was like, "Please, I don't deserve to be here. Send me off to this planet where you need me, and I can be by myself. Like, I don't deserve to be here," sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. This is gonna be another nitpick.
Okay.
Just because I forgot to mention it. You don't see the damage. Okay, I could be wrong.
You don't see what happens to
you don't
face?
see the damage to Torben's face happening. So, like, he gets picked up by Kelnaka. His face looks fine. And then when he gets pushed against the wall, and then when he's let go, like, he's got the thing on his face. And so, are they telling me that the pressure on the wall was so intense that his face started to split? Is that what was happening?
I don't think so. I think it was in the insert shot right before he gets put up against the wall. There's like, and I need to rewatch it. And
because like I went back, that scene, I was like, wait, how'd he get that? And I went back and I just didn't see it. So I could have missed it, but I don't know.
When I first watched it, I was paying attention to, and it cuts, and he just has Torben just has the scars on his face, and I was like, oh, did we just not see how he got that, or was it just like that is one thing that I just want to go and say, a lot of you guys, we really do pride ourselves on being very positive, and so we are being positive about this episode. Like, again, we did not dislike the episode, but there was a lot of things that we found frustrating from just the viewer standpoint. So I apologize if this is against the norm, and if you liked the episode, like, without any hesitation, I am so happy you did.
Yeah,
because like, that's not something that we take away from people, and we are not being hateful in the slightest. We're just criticizing moments that we found frustrating or disappointing, or things that could have been done better.
Agreed. I think we're staying true to form by just honest critique. You know, like we've told you guys a million times by now that we will be honest, you know, like we like a lot of stuff, but like when something frustrates us, we'll talk about it, you know. I think that there's a difference between honest critique and then just kind of unnecessary hating. There was just some stuff about this that frustrates us, and if there is more things in the future, we'll talk about that too. But if anything, that's just a testament to how much we've really loved this show so far, and how it's been really good. And so suddenly for things to just kind of be a little off. But again, as Grayson said, if you liked this episode, fantastic. You know, because I think that there are things, as media is, as art is, there are little things that people will like, and there are little things that people will not, you know. So we're all gonna find different.
There's
sort of
things
stuff that
that Cole and I like that he doesn't like. You know,
right?
We got into not to an argument. We got into a debate about the Rise of Skywalker in line for Space Mountain at Disneyland, because I was like, there's things I like about it and he doesn't like it, and that's fine because it doesn't ruin Star Wars for us. It's just it's just what we do. It's what we do.
It's what we do. If we can we do what we do. I think as long as you keep it open for genuine, honest, civil discussion and critique, totally fine, you know. So yeah. There's there's that spiel of the episode.
Yeah, and I wanted we should have put that at the front, but you know, if you made it this far, now you know. But
which is funny because we're talking about it and we're like, the episode was still cool. I mean,
yeah, like so, yeah, I was about to say, like, there's things. I think really a lot of what it comes down to is like with the instance with the Clawface thing is Clawface. Yeah. That sounds like a Batman villain, like an offshoot of Two-Face.
Sounds like an offshoot of Sabretooth. Oh, it's like the DC version of Sabretooth. Clawface.
Oh yeah, that's so true, dude. It was just like it was weirdly cut. Like I think it would have been awesome to get a scene where Kilnaka just swipes his arm and Torben's face is just he just starts screaming, right? Where he's like, oh, you know.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Grayson. I started laughing because I realized when in Arkham City, when Two-Face gets clawed in the face by Catwoman, he turns into Clawface.
Oh my gosh, Two-Face! Shout out Two-Face. Arkham fans, anybody? We're also big Batman people, so. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a. Still, I can mentally fill in the gaps of not being directly seeing where I think it was just a kind of a poor cut or a lack of directly showing what happened, but it's still like. That fight of the moment when Coral, you know, is like, you shouldn't have brought him here. Yeah. And Torben's like, my mind's fortified, you know, and she's like, I wasn't talking about you, you know, and then Kilnaka is just standing there and he's kind of like twitching a little bit. Maybe
there's like a smash cut where he goes like this. Torben immediately gets downed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, it just comes down to a little bit of negligence from director producer end. Is just, you know, forgetting to put in the shot where it happens.
Right.
You know, you only see the shot until like after he has it. You don't actually see it happen. So I think that's very important because then in a 3-step scenario, having it, getting it, having it, or like not having it, getting it, having it. When it turns into not having it blank, having it, you know, kind of turns into, it gets a little messy on the production side, but that is very nitpicky because, you know, we could nitpick the other movies all day. So, I mean, thank God it's not a Star Wars or a Starbucks cup on the Stark table in Game of Thrones. So there's that. So, the Kilnaka fight, regardless, was very great.
Dude, just seeing such a like an amplified kind of like Balin almost, where, you know, Balin hits hard. That was one of my favorite things about Ahsoka, where he's like really hitting hard on Ahsoka. Kilnaka's like twice Balin's size, and he's just like, he's hitting them with like their blades, and they're getting knocked back like feet away, dude.
Yeah,
you know,
very cool. Don't mess with a Wookiee, you know.
Dude, Wookiee Jedi are my favorite, bro. I love them. Oh my gosh, dude, so cool.
I think I would also have just really enjoyed to see him in his element because he was being controlled. So like, imagine him as like, you know, poised Jedi. What's his style? What's his stance? You know.
I hope we get to see that. To be honest, like Kilnaka has been kind of a shell of a character. He's kind of just been more of a force of nature rather than an actual character. Like
he's there because he's a Wookiee.
Yeah.
You know, he's there for the Wookiee points. You know, they're trying to cash in on the it's a Wookiee, you know, like instead of actually being a character. But I mean, it's okay. You know, you have that.
He's getting a comic book. That's cool. I don't know if it's like 1 issue or 4 issues or something, but I don't know.
The Kilnaka comic book. You're all week.
And then we already talked about Torben doing his like crazy saber moves, but man, like he was that when he ignites his saber, just that yellow looks so crisp in that shot. I don't know why. It's just like someone in the comments, of course, because people were arguing about something. They were like, oh man, that gold saber looks sweet. And then someone was like, it's yellow. And it's like, in lore, gold and yellow are like, it's like interchangeable, dude. Like there's no
gold is a variant of yellow, brother.
Yeah, you know? I was like, I'm like, when I program my lightsaber and I want a yellow blade, I program it as gold, not yellow, because yellow ends up having a green tint to it, like Ahsoka's Shoto in Clone Wars.
I mean, it is more gold anyway. It is more gold than yellow anyway. So,
It has that slight orange hue to it with the yellow. It looks amazing. And dude, he was just like he was doing Annie-Obies and going crazy. Like they were not getting through his blade, bro.
Honestly, very promising duelist, or at the very least promising, just saber combatant, or probably like Sarisu, very, very defensive.
I do wonder, like, did he immediately take the Barret? No, he said he took it for 10 years. So it would have been 6 years after this event he took the Bearish Vow.
Yeah, they probably just weighed on his mind for a long time.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's also interesting because I forget about this. And we did not get the chance to talk about episode 6, but this is mentioned, and this is mentioned in other things, that the timeline is that roughly when he took the Bearish Vow is when Osha got kicked out of the order. Sorry, when she left the order, but it was kind of. It's kind of
implied that she was kicked out.
They were basically forcefully resigning her. They weren't like kicking her out. They were just yeah, you kind of have to, and they didn't really explain. We don't ever find out why.
Oh, it'd be really cool if you left. Yeah. You don't have to. But it'd be really great. And honestly, we're really inconvenienced right now.
And if you don't leave, well, you got to be the janitor, and we take away your lightsaber. So
if you don't leave, something's gonna happen that's out of my hands. You might actually end up leaving anyway.
Yoda has a Glock in his chair. He won't be afraid to use it.
Yoda's really angry right now. He just started graying. I
also, another thing that I really liked, little reference to the book Light of the Jedi with the great hyperspace disaster.
Oh, right. Yeah. I picked up on that. I was like,
I feel like people who don't know about the High Republic know about that whole scenario. And it was cool that that planet, Brindok lost all life on the planet, and then because of the Vergence, it grew back. Which, okay, begs the question. All right, let's get into a little bit of debate and speculating here.
Yeah.
Is Brindok itself a Vergence, or is that weird hole the Vergence, or is it kind of a mixture of both?
So, I don't have the answer to that question, but this is kind of like.
Well, all right, that's gonna be.
So, like, I'm not for that. I'm not really sure. I think the hole. is connected. It feels like it feels very Octo of that dark side pit,
which is also a Vergence. That hole on Octo and the planet itself is a Vergence.
But it also kind of rang a bell of, if you recall, in the Plagueis book, it was said that I think Tenebrus's master created like a rift or a Vergence in the Force that essentially like alerted the Jedi that something was happening. That essentially like
it weakened the Jedi.
Yeah, it essentially like announced unofficially the Sith's return, that it was like something's happening. And so in my mind I was like, that just sounds very similar. So I do kind of like that, this is a Vergence that happened. I think that's great.
Yeah. I do think we will get answers to what that is next week, because my belief is that Sol and May, he is taking her back to Brindok. I think that's where they're going.
Oh, that'd be something.
Yeah.
That'd be something.
That's what Will, shout out Will of the Force, and Connor both think, Beyond the Dune Sea. Yeah. They both think that Sol is taking her to Brindok, because where we last left off in episode 6, he says, like, I've thought for 16 years what I would say to you. While she's unconscious, he's like, now it's time for you to find out the truth. Which is a thing that I found it an interesting choice, that this episode being a flashback, like, they formatted it more similar to episode 3, in terms of it just being a straight flashback, but I would have found it interesting if it was Sol telling May about it. But it might be a thing of they kept that intentional, because next week to get some more answers, we might find Sol and May talking and him explaining what happened from his POV as we learn more about it.
the first shot, Soul's just like, and that's how it happened.
And that's Star Wars.
And that's Star Wars. Yeah. Do we want to go in like just kind of like brass tacks or bullet points of the previous episode? Because since we didn't get the chance to talk about it, okay, how about that? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. It was my second favorite episode of the whole series.
I loved it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was real great.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple points.
Mm-hmm.
Chimera.
What a hunk.
About to make me act up.
Yeah. New hot Sith or bad guy introduced.
Another point I have, the music in that episode is very beautiful. I really, really enjoyed the score of that episode, and I really want to listen to it when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then final point is that I think that there was a very interesting contrast between Soul and May and Chimera and Osha. And the latter, with Chimera and Osha, it seemed a lot more genuine and friendly than with Soul and May. With Soul and May, they're in a sterile ship. There's skullduggery. They're they're going against each other. Soul's got May strapped to a table by the end of it, but Chimera is just straight up going, "You can do what you want. You know, you can follow me if you want."
Very sympathetic.
The ship's over there. You know, my helmet's right there. You know, really cool that there's a cortosis vein, by the way.
Okay, that's another thing we got to talk about. What the planet is, and I think I've got my pick.
What do you think?
Baldemnik from Plagueis.
Ooh.
Because remember they were there farming for cortosis.
Oh my!
And Leslie Headland confirmed it's not Octo. So, and they also make it very
cool.
well known that it is an unknown planet, and we know that Baldemnik was an oceanic planet with cortosis vein deposits. Little EU Legends connection there.
Yeah. So it just Chimera is just more. He's more compelling the more he's on screen. So I really enjoy his character.
We talked a little bit about it while we were flying our job for Hondo, but I mean this. Like we were enjoying the show for sure, but his inclusion. Which is it is a little bit of a shame that we found out that his inclusion and extra development was a little bit more of a post afterthought thing. That being said, his character, everything about him is so intriguing to. Did it again? I'm gonna find different. We're gonna go through this together, guys. I'm gonna find different synonyms for intriguing.
Everybody's got little like vocab words that they love using. It's just that yours is very very connected to a dumb line from a dumb movie.
from Morbius. It was very. I used captivating earlier. It was he is a very engaging character.
There you go.
And yeah, I do you think Osha will what?
We both went like,
Do you think? Okay, everybody thinks that there's a little bit of which this was intentional by Leslie Headland. Do you think that there's a little bit of a romantic spark between the two, between Osha and Chimera?
I think that I don't think I'm not sure if Osha feels anything, but Chimera is definitely a flirt.
Chimera's like.
And given that he knew that Osha was following him stripping naked to get into the pool, get into the lake, and then deliberately walking out,
just it's hanging out, bro.
Yeah, right, yeah. That was absolutely deliberate. So,
I mean, even the moment where so I saw a video where someone turned on audio descriptions for people who have hearing disabilities and stuff, or they have sight disabilities, and it read like a smut romance novel, like it was like he drops his pants. And I was like, wow, that's hilarious. But even down to the moment where like she puts the saber to his throat and he like grabs her hand like tenderly. I'm like,
well, he also acted kind of weird when they first met. When he got up really close and he said, "You look just like her."
Yeah.
Yeah. So he might just be a little weird.
But she said, Leslie Headland said, and this is something that I'm okay with her saying, is that she said she did it intentionally because she wanted the dark side to feel seductive, because that is what it is.
I mean, it is. And also, you know, as a...
Who wouldn't want to be seducted by Palpatine?
Right, exactly. But I mean, as an Acolyte sponsor of the dark side, Chimera probably would give in to, like, you know, this flirtation, lustful feeling, you know? So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was coming on to her, you know?
Yeah.
Thankfully not in, you know, any aggressive ways, but I will say...
no, he's been nice.
It was a very bold move with the lake.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so...
Hey, at least he offered. He's like, I'd like to put my clothes back on, you know? At least
well, like, I think he actually said... If you're not gonna join me,
he did say that.
I'd like to put my clothes back on. You know,
bro was using the Old Republic flirt options right there.
Dude, he is, and he's got a high charisma stat, but their relationship is not built up, so it didn't fly. That's a hard roll. So
yeah, I do think their relationship, like if we do get a season 2, it will be more of a focal point in a season 2. Like they would be cruxes of that.
I'd really enjoy that. I mean, I would clearly Osha is not really making any attempts to kind of forego like her turning, because she, at the end of the episode she puts the helmet on, which is a cool transition. I like that.
I have a little thing about that. I talked to Will about this as well, that I really enjoy this moment, and immediately the moment with the helmet made me think was the alternate ending to Return of the Jedi. It was a draft ending, right? Where it was going to be a bad ending. Where,
I know what you're talking. Yeah,
you know, he was going to put the helmet, for people who don't know. He was going after Vader died, he was going to take the helmet and put it on and go, now I am Vader, right? And obviously that didn't happen, and that would have been kind of sucky.
That would have been so stupid, but
yeah. I'm glad that didn't happen, because I love my happy Return of the Jedi ending. Yeah. But that moment immediately when she puts it on and she's sitting there and you're just hearing like the enclosed breathing and like just like the so limited visibility really made me think of that. And I'm like, what is that foreshadowing? Really good moment in episode 5.
Well, and then 6. It immediately cuts to like the classic space credits, you know, which is kind of like a cool little double meaning there, where like she's just kind of opening herself to the Force, you know, of the space. It would be interesting if that was her like reawakening to the Force. I mean, because she still hasn't been with it, you know.
She's been a little off her game. Okay, I got to talk about the credits of the most recent episode, though. It's the last thing. It is my critique. I'll be honest. Listen, the song was a bop. I did like the song. Yeah. But it is so not Star Wars to me to have a song with that. It feels
out of place. And it's not, I mean, I'm assuming it's not an in-universe song. If they say that it is, maybe I'd feel better about it. But at the same time, I think that was odd. Odd choosing there. It was like I had just finished watching an episode of Riverdale or something like that.
I'll be honest, and I mean this. And then if somehow a creator of this show is listening to our podcast, thank you for listening. We're not trying to tear it apart. Genuine critique, like we said, but I did laugh when it at the end. It was sitting there, and I was like, "Oh, we're getting this cool like melody of like the chant thing," because it said in the bottom of the subtitles it was like power of many, like chant and low key playing, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then it was just like someone started singing, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah." It's just not. I mean, like the song itself is fine, you know, like it sounded good. I just think that like, I mean, imagine if that played at like the end of Return of the Jedi, you know. I would feel first song too. Like if they really wanted to do it, maybe not have it be the first song in the credits, you know. But
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but it was a little weird. But I'm gonna go back and say one final thing about episode 6.
Sure.
Was that I think it's really cool that Chimera's helmet is like a sensory deprivation chamber, because that means that like when he's fighting all of those Jedi, he's kind of like he's like Sith Daredevil, and I think that you know, as soon as I thought about that, I was like, ooh, more points, you know.
Because it also is very Magneto-like, where people can't read his thoughts. We didn't get to talk about that with episode 5 because we were busy doing a smuggler run. But he says to Soul, or like he explains that like people can't read his thoughts through the helmet, like Magneto's helmet with Xavier, which is also really cool.
Yeah, and yet it's like also an amplification of his focus, you know. So like, it's very cool.
Also, the fact that Manny Jacinto fought wearing that thing. That was him. Like I saw a training picture of him. He was because he trained without the mask. Then he got to a point where he had to train with a replica mask on, and he was like doing. And I was like, that is crazy, dude.
Well, I also liked how Chimera likened it to the helmets that they wore as younglings, which brings me to something I want to talk about really fast. He was a Jedi before? Question mark. And also, how old is he? Because Osha was like, how long ago was that? Like, I don't remember you. And he was like, it was a really long time ago. So where is he from? And how old is he? It gives me Vitiate vibes. And I'm a little worried about that. Not in a bad way, but I'm like, oh no.
Okay, so Connor and Seth were talking about that today on their show. Is that like is this an essence transfer thing where Vitiate wasn't he like the Emperor of the Sith for like 1,000 years or something?
Oh my god! If they like reintroduce this as like a plot of Bane or something, because Bane tried to transfer his essence and he failed. But what if in canon he was actually successful? That would be wow, that would be something.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, I mean.
I really doubt that, and I think people would be there would be uproar about that, but I think it would also be very fitting of the line of when Osha in this episode asks him what he wants, and he's like, I want, like the power of 2 or something like that, which is very Bane, very obviously Chimera, Bane line or not, adheres to the rule, but yeah, we're curious. And then also the scar on his back is assumedly from his master, but then that would make you think, wow, what Jedi did that?
I mean, listen, everybody's thinking it, everybody's saying it. It's what I think. I think it's Vernestra.
Vernestra. Oh, whoa! That would be. Oh my god, that would be terrible. Like,
because that would bring her full connection in, because she has not seen him yet. To be like, if it's a thing where they all converge on Brendock, which is also, isn't it called, it's called Ascension, but there's like the Convergence or whatever. They all converge on Brendock, and it'd be a thing of like, he's like, hello, master. And she's like, it's like, you're still alive. Like that would be a crazy revelation. And I have a little bit of credence to that, because so I was thinking about the whole like a long time ago thing, where like a long time can mean a lot to people, where you can say like, oh man, that was so long ago, and it'd be like, the way we talk about it, it's like it was 5 years ago, but the way he's saying it makes it seem like it was a long time ago.
I think he said like either really or very long time.
Yeah, so. But I think about the only thing I could think of is I was like, well, let me think about Obi-Wan, and he goes like, he says, he's like, oh, Obi-Wan. He's like, well, of course I know he's me. He's just like, well, he's like, then that's a name I've not heard in a long time. And like, obviously, I mean, for him, say we'll go for the full 20 years. It was 20 years ago. I mean, we don't know how old Chimera is, but maybe it is 20 years. But the way he was phrasing it, like, maybe, I don't know if he was saying it because it felt 20 years. If say that whatever happened to him was 20 years prior, that would be before Osha even joined the Order. That'd be 4 years before the whole incident on Brendock happened. But it is the implication that it feels like it's way longer than that. And I'll be honest, Manny Jacinto does not look, he's a pretty young, youthful looking guy. So, and therefore Chimera is. So
it's like Chekhov's gun, like the gun wouldn't be in the shot unless it was going to be used. Right? So then why would they make such a point to say it was a really long time ago, unless it actually was?
And that his master did this to him.
I don't know. And then honestly, if I recall, I don't even know if he specifically mentioned that he was a Jedi. It was just very much inferred because he like wore the thing as a youngling. So I just thought to myself, like, I mean, what if he was just cast aside by a Sith master that didn't want him? So there's a lot of things there too. So I really can't say.
I hope we get answers, man. I hope
that would be good. At least, you know,
at least a couple. And if they're like, I am someone that I am not against them doing a season 2. Like, while I did have frustrations with this past episode, I'm still excited for next week because we are coming back to the modern, and I know we'll get more Chimere and we'll get more May and Osha and Sol and Vernestra. Like, we've really thinned the herd down on all these characters, and all the characters that are there are the ones that intrigue me the most, despite, you know, some of them doing silly little things. So I am excited because of that. But I'm not against them doing a season 2 dependent on what happens this upcoming week, which, to be honest, I have no idea what's going to happen.
I don't know where it's going to go. I hope it's a good finale. That's what I'll say. I even though I did still enjoy episode 7, I kind of hope that episode 8 brings us back up to speed, you know, because I want to finish off strong.
I'll be honest, even if there's plot holes and stuff, I'm like a child with candy, bro. You give me another Chimere lightsaber fight, I'm going,
You give me Chimere, dude. Chimere versus Vernestra?
That would be, okay. Go check out my lore video if you don't know about this. So, the reason Vernestra, the lore of the lightsaber whip in canon, and I believe you saw this, but for the audience, for people who didn't see this, the Jedi used it against the Sith who used the forbidden forms.
Yeah.
Typically, when people think of forbidden forms, they think of Trikata. All right.
Yeah.
I saw someone commented this on the post that Chimere uses a little bit of Trikata in his fight. Like, he does it like a couple of like turning off and turning on the lightsaber really quick, just a little bit.
Didn't Jecki mention that he's using a forbidden form or something like that? I might be having a crazy memory lapse, but I remember in that episode someone referencing that a forbidden form is being used. I want to say maybe like Yord was like, I don't recognize the form or something like that, and someone mentions that it's a forbidden form or something. So
I mean, he's definitely not fighting. Cool. He's not fighting honorably. He's fighting dirty. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so it would be cool if he trained to learn how to fight like that because he knows his master. And there's a lot of time between where Vernestra is at in the books currently. Like, she still has hair and she's still like in her 20s or something. You know, I don't even think she's in her 20s. I think she's like 19 in the books right now. Yeah. This is a whole 100 years after that. She's like a good 120 years old. Her first apprentice did almost fall to the dark side in the first book that she appeared in. Shout out my boy Emery Kentaros. He almost fell to the dark side, and it would be interesting if it got to the point where she ended up having another apprentice that did fall, and she just never talked about it. You know,
I think that has the potential to be very cool. So
maybe.
But well, Grayson, do we have any closing thoughts about this? About these 2 episodes?
No, I don't think so. I thinking back on it more. You must have just caught a bug or something.
Yes.
Did you get it?
I got it, but it didn't die. And now I'm really upset. There's been a mosquito in my room for days. And I have woken up to bug bites, and it's the worst thing in the world. Anyway.
You need to get one of those little there's like little thing. This is a shout out for anybody who has bug problems. I think there's like little things you can get that'll like just spray in your room that'll get rid of bugs. I don't know.
Bug spray?
That's my take. Yeah, I guess so. No, I don't think I have any thoughts. Despite my heavy amount of flaws or problems that I had with the episode.
I don't know why I thought you were about to say, despite my heavy amount of flaws, I don't have anything else to say.
Hey, everybody got flaws, man. I got heavy flaws.
It's true.
I still did, the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what? I'm not utterly disappointed. I'm not like, oh my gosh, this like, I'm not we are not the type of people to be like, oh my gosh, this ruined Star Wars for me. I'm just not like that, you know?
Yeah.
And certainly this, I was like, yeah, I had problems with this episode, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. I'm still excited for next week. Kind of crazy that the show's already wrapping. These shows come and go so quick, man.
Bad Batch is a memory.
Dude, I was thinking about Bad Batch today, and I was like, I cannot believe that season started and ended this year. Like, that is, like, not the whole show, but I'm just like, that feels like, that feels so long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, how about yourself before we do, we'll do a little chat pack question.
I think episode 6 was a really great, quiet and intimate, thankfully not in a completely sexual way, episode that we sort of needed after episode 5, which was very intense.
Yes.
And then as for episode 7, I'm just going to say it again. Every part of production was great except for the writing, a little bit of a dip. So yeah, kind of, you know, stunted on some of the mystery payoff. Yeah. But other than that, you know, like quality wise, it's still good. You know, at the very least, we don't have bad writing and bad quality, you know, which there is something that I could reference. I think overall, you know, as long as episode 8 still feels like a satisfying conclusion, I think Acolyte has been very enjoyable. So yeah, I'm still okay. I'm all right.
Yeah.
We're with it.
Yeah, and then after this, like, I'm excited to see kind of like, I think I'm ready to go back to a different era. Not because I've been kind of hopping all around with different stuff. Like, I finished reading The Living Force, which we'll do our final with me, Will, and Seth. We'll do our final thing on that. But now I'm reading Heir to the Empire, so I'm after Bad Batch and Acolyte, I actually am kind of a little bit happy to take it, and Tales of the Empire. I'm happy to have a little bit of a visual break where I can just kind of go at my own pace. Because the best thing about these things is, like, you get them, but then you're like, all right, I can take a little bit of a breather, you know, and wait for the next thing to come out. So I think Skeleton Crew is later this year. Yeah. Allegedly. I don't know.
I really hope it's like an Andor situation where Skeleton Crew is like an absolute smash hit.
Yeah, dude.
That would be really great, because other than that, my mind holds no space for Skeleton Crew. Not even in a malignant sense. It's just like, I know it's on its way, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's, you know? It's more of a thing of we just don't know anything other than
I don't know anything, and it just seems like I don't know. Anyway, chat pack time. Yeah,
chat pack. I think we think pretty similarly on this. I thought this was going to be a deep question, but I don't think so. Question 79. Do you think Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one who brought balance to the Force? Why or why not?
Easy answer. Very easy answer. Yes, because George says so.
yeah. I know there's some debate that Luke is the chosen one. And like, I know Obi-Wan thinks that at the time of Rebels. Sam Witwer has said this before, that I'm like, it only makes sense that the guy they thought was the chosen one is not turned to the dark side. Why would Obi-Wan, 15 years later think that he's still the chosen one? He has no reason to think that, but we know as an audience, as the timeline progresses, Anakin was the chosen one. He did bring balance to the Force. Unfortunately, the Force was brought out of balance once again, because the prophecy, as far as we know, never said that it could come out of balance. But what Anakin did,
Anakin was the only chosen one.
Yeah, it's like we don't know if this is a recurring prophecy, but for the time period of the Skywalker saga, the main Star Wars timeline, Anakin Skywalker was most certainly the chosen one. Hey, and even he even I know you hate this movie. All right, I know you hate it. I'm just kidding. I know you don't hate it. I just know you have severe problems with it. But Anakin does say, in Rise of Skywalker, bring back the balance as I did.
Yeah,
that's a good line, man.
I think that's a great line. I don't have anything wrong with that. And obviously, like Grayson, we all know that he's goofing and gaffing. I just need to say, I don't hate Rise of Skywalker.
No, I know you don't.
It's just like, it just feels like a really cheap cheeseburger that I'll enjoy when I need to eat, but it's not something I always go with the cheeseburger analogy, but
wait, can we get this man a cheeseburger?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Hey, Dex, from California. I heard you actually tried an In-N-Out burger, by the way. Did you?
I did.
Did you like it?
It was really good. I definitely was completely sober when I had it. So that didn't change my perception about it whatsoever. So anyway, I think that's all that we have for this evening. Grayson, let's give us those closing notes. Give us those bumps.
You got it, man. You can follow me at Shrades38. More importantly, you can follow our being, our essence, us, the power of two, the power of one, power of many. You guys,
the power within, real ones.
Power within, the power of love. From Back to the Future. At Mortis FM. We're on Threads now. I started a Threads account because I was like, I don't want to get on Twitter, but I like sometimes just reading people's thoughts when they don't have to have a picture associated with them. So we're on Threads now as well, but TikTok, Instagram, and wherever you're listening to this, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, and YouTube. Cole, where can they find you?
You can find me at the.cosmic.drifter on Instagram, and you can also find my YouTube channel at the Cosmic Drifter. Yeah.
One last thing.
Oh!
I forgot to say, opening the episode, because it's been a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you all for 300 subs. Huge milestone.
Let's go!
Currently.
Go
ahead.
No, I insist.
Okay. Currently, I think the goal is to try to reach 500 by the end of the year. I think we can do it. I think we can do it. So if you enjoy Mortis FM, you want to share you want to share the Star Wars love with your friends. We're these two idiots right here talking about Star Wars are enjoyable. Share it with your friends, but thank you for being here regardless.
Thank you everyone for continuing to give us support. Thank you for indulging us in our little skit while we were at Disneyland. That was a really fun time, and it was also a spontaneous idea. Strictly speaking, we weren't going to do anything really. But then I was like, I don't know who came up with the idea. I think it was like both of us just kind of, came up with it.
We came up with the idea to do an episode while we were there in person, and then we were like, better yet, we were going to do a video while we were in Galaxy's Edge, and we were like, well, why don't we just do the episode while we're flying the Falcon?
Yeah, because we were like, we don't want it to be really long, because you don't have a lot of time to edit, and it would be really funny if we just kind of like yelled at each other while piloting.
Yes.
But yeah, end of the year goal, 500 subs. Cole's personal goal for Mortis FM, 5 million subs by tomorrow. You heard it here first, folks. If you're listening to this now,
99,999,000.
let's go! I need one more person to get us to 5 million right now. If you do, I will give you nothing, but I'll be very happy about it. Thank you very much. All right. With that said, Grayson, may the Force be with you.
And with you, my friend. Always.